What if I told you that doing the easiest things on your to-do list first, knocking out those quick emails or organizing your desk, grabbing that low-hanging fruit, is actually the exact habit that is silently destroying your productivity?
I mean, it feels completely counterintuitive, right?
Right.
We are neurologically wired to crave that quick dopamine hit of crossing something off a list.
We really are. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably already have like 10 different productivity apps on your phone, a highly curated morning routine, and yet you still find yourself burned out by 3 p.m.
Yeah, which is incredibly common.
Right. So I've been looking at this massive stack of sources today, and honestly, the through line wasn't obvious at first. We've got ancient Greek philosophy with Stoicism, the Socratic Method, statistical concepts like the Lindy Effect, modern productivity guides like the Habits cheat sheet, and even physical grounding techniques like walking meditation.
All right, on the surface, it looks like a totally random assortment of ideas. But the thread connecting them is that they're all trying to solve the exact same human problem. How to operate a human mind in a chaotic, unpredictable environment without breaking down. The terminology changes depending on the century, but the core objective doesn't.
So the mission for this deep dive is to sort of weave these disparate sources together to build an ultimate intellectual toolkit for you, the listener, to help you cultivate a resilient, deeply analytical mind without falling victim to burnout.
Exactly.
But before we figure out what goes into the toolkit, we need a filter. We need a way to decide what information is actually worth keeping because there is just so much noise out there. And the sources give us a fascinating statistical concept for this called the Lindy Effect.
Yeah, the Lindy Effect essentially argues that time is the ultimate judge of quality. It proposes that the future life expectancy of a non-perishable item, so like a book, a philosophy, or a technology, is proportional to its current age.
Wait, and this was named after a deli?
It was. Yeah, Lindy's a deli in New York.
Right. So observers at this deli were looking at Broadway shows and noticed this mathematical pattern. If a new show had been running for 3 months, statistically, you could expect it to run for maybe 3 more months.
Right.
But if you had a classic show that had survived for centuries, the data suggested it had centuries left in it.
Exactly. And the mechanism behind this is a concept called anti-fragility.
Yeah.
Things that survive for a very long time don't just endure stress. They're actually built to absorb stress and use it to adapt.
Oh, interesting.
A great application of this from the sources is Warren Buffett's 1988 investment in Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was founded in 1892. Buffett wasn't betting on a flashy new startup.
Right. He was looking at an entity that had already been brutally stress tested by world wars, the Great Depression, massive shifts in global consumer trends. It had proven its anti-fragility.
Exactly.
So, okay, the Lindy effect is basically like a sturdy cast iron skillet passed down for generations versus, I don't know, a trendy plastic kitchen gadget that breaks in a month.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
But I want to challenge this filter a bit because if we only look at what has survived the longest, aren't we guaranteeing innovation paralysis? I mean, ignoring brilliant new things like the QWERTY keyboard on my laptop has been around since the 1870s.
Yeah, that's true.
It survived, so it's technically Lindy compliant, but we know it's actually not the most efficient layout. It just got locked in early because of network effects.
And that is the exact limitation the sources warn about. They specifically highlight survivorship bias.
Right.
Survivorship bias happens when we only study the things that made it through the filter and ignore the invisible graveyard of failures. Sometimes an inferior solution survives simply because it was adopted early and everyone just got used to it.
Ah, okay.
So the Lindy effect isn't a flawless law of physics, right? It is a heuristic. It's a highly reliable starting point to filter out fads, but it requires us to balance historical resilience with measured innovation.
Makes sense. So applying that Lindy heuristic to our mental toolkit naturally pushes us toward ideas that have been stress tested for millennia, which leads directly to Stoicism.
Yes, exactly.
Founded around 300 BCE by Zeno of Citium in the Agora of Athens, and later famously adopted by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And, we've all heard the pop culture version of Stoicism, just suppress your emotions and power through.
Right, the stiff upper lip idea.
Exactly. But the actual operating system the sources describe is far more sophisticated than that.
It really is. The core mechanism of Stoicism relies on living in accordance with what they call logos, or reason, and cultivating the four virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control.
But the foundational tool, like the very first thing you pull out of this kit, is the dichotomy of control.
Right. The ruthless categorization of the world into two buckets.
Exactly. Things you have absolute control over, which is entirely limited to your own thoughts and actions, and things you have zero control over, which includes the weather, the economy, and the opinions of other people.
Which is hard for a lot of people to accept.
Oh, totally. Let's ditch the tired analogies about driving a car, where you control the wheel but not the traffic. The dichotomy of control makes me think of surfing.
Oh, surfing. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, because you cannot control the ocean. You can't control the size of the wave, the temperature of the water, or the wind. If you expend your energy trying to yell at the rain or control the wave, you will drown.
Right.
The only thing you control is your balance on the board. Stoicism is just mental surfing.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. And to maintain that balance on the board, the Stoics developed specific psychological exercises. One of them is negative visualization, or the premeditation of adversity.
Right. This is where you intentionally, mentally rehearse the absolute worst case scenario. Like you picture losing your job, your business failing, or the market crashing. At first glance, that sounds incredibly depressing.
It sounds totally pessimistic, sure. But neurologically, it is actually an immunization technique.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, when a disaster strikes unexpectedly, your brain floods your system with cortisol, inducing panic. By vividly rehearsing the disaster beforehand, you expose yourself to a microdose of that stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you build a cognitive plan for it. So when the wave actually breaks over you, the shock value is gone. You've already lived it in your mind, and you can immediately move into problem solving.
That's amazing. And we also have the view from above technique, right? Where you visualize yourself zooming out past your house, your city, the earth, until you are just a tiny speck.
Exactly. It forces the realization that your massive, overwhelming problem is objectively microscopic.
But here's the friction I run into with Stoicism. Managing your mind with sheer philosophical willpower all day is exhausting. If I'm actively surfing those waves all day, by 8 p.m., my cognitive reserves are totally shot.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm still going to end up doom scrolling on my phone. We need a way to automate this.
Yeah, because willpower is finite. We can't rely on it as a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the modern behavioral psychology tools in our stack, the systematization of action through habits.
Right. Shifting from ancient mindset to daily action. Most of us are already familiar with the foundational rules from the habits cheat sheet, James Clear's 4 laws of making a good habit. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
And inverting those to break bad ones. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Exactly. But rather than just listing those out, I want to look at how the best self-coach source applies these mechanics to the 7 bad habits that actively kill our productivity.
Let's do it. Let's examine habit number 5 on their list, living in your email inbox.
Oh, I'm so guilty of this.
Most people are. The average professional is checking email constantly, treating their inbox as a default to-do list. The mechanism of disruption here is context switching. Every time you glance at an email, your brain abandons its current deep-thinking task, processes the new information, and then has to burn heavy cognitive fuel to get back on track.
And the source's solution applies the habit laws perfectly. You make the distraction invisible by completely turning off push notifications.
Yes.
Then you create an implementation intention. You decide in advance, I will only process email at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. You take the decision out of the moment.
Exactly. You systematize it. We see a similar biological mechanism with the habit of looking at screens before bed.
Ah, the doom scrolling.
Yeah. The blue light emitted by phones essentially tricks your pineal gland into thinking the sun is still up, which suppresses the production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep.
So again, we use the inversion laws. Make the bad habit difficult. You set a strict cutoff time an hour before bed, and you leave the phone charging in the kitchen.
Right. You build a wall.
Yeah, because if you wake up at 2 a.m. and want to doom scroll, you have to physically get out of a warm bed and walk down the hall. You've introduced enough physical friction to break the behavioral loop.
And this brings us back to that counterintuitive hook we started with, the danger of doing easy tasks first.
Yeah, I really struggled with this one initially. The best self source identifies this as a major productivity killer, but crossing 3 easy things off my list at 9 a.m. feels like I'm building momentum.
Right. It feels great. But the source argues that the momentum is an illusion masking decision fatigue.
Interesting.
Every choice you make, no matter how small, depletes your prefrontal cortex. If you spend your peak morning energy on trivial, low-impact tasks, by the time you face the complex, needle-moving project, your cognitive battery is totally drained.
Wow.
The brain will actively avoid the difficult work because it lacks the fuel to process it.
Which is why the source advocates for the eat the frog first strategy. You force yourself to tackle the ugliest, most cognitively demanding task the second you sit down at your desk. By clearing the hardest obstacle first, you not only preserve your peak energy for what actually matters, but the rest of the day just feels like a downhill coast.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Yeah.
So we've now established a system. We've used Stoicism to categorize what we control, and we've used behavioral psychology to automate our actions and protect our energy,
Right.
which creates a new, high-quality problem, a massive surplus of cognitive bandwidth. The question becomes, what do you do with that newly freed up brain power?
Well, you use it to think deeply. We move from just optimizing our time to deepening our intellect, and the sources point us to the Socratic Method for this.
Right.
We're looking at documents regarding the Great Books Foundation, established in 1947 by Robert Maynard Hutchins and Mortimer Adler at the University of Chicago.
Right, and their entire mission was promoting liberal education and dialectic reasoning through foundational texts.
Now, just to be completely impartial here, because it is in the sources, we should note that the 1952 Great Books of the Western World movement faced a lot of criticism.
Yes, it did.
The sources mention it was criticized for perceived biases, specifically its intense focus on Western culture and a heavy predominance of white male authors. We aren't taking a side on that debate. We're just reporting the historical context provided in the source.
Absolutely, it's an important piece of the historical context. But despite those debates, the Foundation's core goal of liberal education and dialectic reasoning really persisted. And the vehicle for that dialectic reasoning is Socratic questioning.
Right. Which is not what a lot of people think it is.
No, it's a profound shift from how most of us view education. It isn't about rote memorization or eliciting a correct factual answer. The primary function of Socratic questioning is to rigorously probe the underlying assumptions and value systems that shape a belief.
Because I always pictured the Socratic Method as just that annoying guy at a dinner party playing devil's advocate, just arguing the opposite point to trap someone.
Oh, totally. But the source from Colorado State University specifically dismantles that misconception. Playing devil's advocate is adversarial. It's a game of, if you affirm it, I deny it.
Right.
Genuine Socratic questioning is collaborative. It is a shared dialogue designed to demonstrate the inherent complexity of an issue. The goal isn't to win an argument, but to jointly evaluate whether a belief can withstand structural scrutiny.
And the sources break this down into two specific processes, right? First is the destructive process. You ask questions that force the other person or yourself to confront the logical flaws in a current opinion.
Yes.
You aren't attacking them. You are basically holding up a mirror to their logic until they see the cracks. And once they realize the foundation is weak, you transition to the constructive process, where you guide the dialogue toward a more justifiable, well-reasoned conclusion.
Exactly. And the environment in which this happens is critical.
Yeah.
The source draws a stark contrast between two teaching styles to illustrate this. They mention the fictional Dr. Kingsfield from the movie The Paper Chase.
Oh.
Yeah, he relies on humiliation and intimidation to grill his law students.
Just using pure fear as a teaching tool.
Right. And when a student is terrified, their amygdala activates the fight or flight response, which literally shuts down the higher order thinking areas of the brain. They can't reason. They can only react.
That makes total sense.
So to counter this, the source highlights Professor Rob Reich from Stanford, who advocates for a kinder, gentler Socratic method. His goal is to create productive discomfort.
Productive discomfort. I love that phrasing so much. It means the professor isn't just withholding the right answer to be difficult. It's an acknowledgement that the problem genuinely lacks a simple answer.
Yes.
It engages the prefrontal cortex by inviting the student into the uncertainty rather than punishing them for it.
It forces neural adaptation. You are literally rewiring your understanding of a concept by wrestling with its contradictions.
Okay, but let's be honest about the reality of living this way. If you are ruthlessly policing your habits, maintaining stoic detachment from external chaos, eating the frog every morning, and engaging in intense Socratic inquiry, your brain is going to overheat.
Oh, without a doubt.
It is an enormous cognitive load. If we don't have a cooling system, all of this optimization just accelerates the burnout we're trying to escape.
Which is exactly why the mind requires physical grounding to sustain high-level abstract thought. And this is why our final source introduces the practice of walking meditation.
Right. This practice combines the mental focus of mindfulness with the physical reality of moving through space. It has deep roots across multiple cultures,
Mm.
appearing in Buddhism, Taoism, and yoga.
Yeah.
And the sources outline two distinct styles. You have the Theravada tradition, where practitioners walk a straight 40-foot path back and forth. Then you have the Japanese practice of kinhin, which involves incredibly slow, clockwise walking in a circular pattern.
And the physiological data supporting this is really remarkable. Randomized controlled trials cited in the sources demonstrate that walking meditation yields tangible reductions in anxiety, measurable improvements in heart rate variability, and even better outcomes for patients dealing with severe chronic illnesses like COPD.
Wow.
Yeah, the bilateral stimulation of walking helps regulate the nervous system.
The mechanics of how you do it are very specific, too. It's not just taking your dog for a walk while listening to a podcast. The goal is to drop out of the default mode network, that part of your brain that constantly loops through anxieties and to-do lists, and drop entirely into your sensory processing.
Right, you hyper-focus on the physical sensation of the foot touching the ground. You catalog what you smell, the temperature of the wind on your face. Notice your state of mind without judgment.
You can even use rhythmic counting if you get distracted. It sounds exactly like defragmenting a computer's hard drive, but you're taking it for a walk in a park.
What a great analogy.
But here's the part that usually derails people, myself included. If I set out for a 10-minute walking meditation and 3 minutes in, I catch my mind wandering to an email I need to draft, does that mean the meditation failed? Have I messed it up?
No, not at all. The source addresses this beautifully. Distraction is a symptom of life. It's a feature of the human mind, not a bug.
Oh, that's a relief.
Right. If your mind wanders, you haven't failed. The actual act of meditation is the moment you realize you've drifted. You observe the distraction without judgment, and you gently, intentionally redirect your focus back to the sensation of your feet.
Okay.
If you have to pull your attention back 20 times in 10 minutes, that is 20 repetitions of mental bicep curls. Practicing non-judgment and gently refocusing the practice is the return.
Man, what an incredible arc we've drawn today. We started by looking at this chaotic modern world and used the Lindy Effect to filter for tools that actually work.
We installed the Stoic dichotomy of control as our baseline operating system to stop wasting energy on things we cannot change.
We automated our behavior using the laws of habit formation, deliberately choosing to eat the frog and tackle the hard tasks first to reclaim our productivity.
Right.
We took that preserved energy and applied the Socratic Method, using productive discomfort to rigorously test our own core beliefs. And finally, we implemented walking meditation as the physical heat sink to ground our nervous systems and prevent burnout.
And for you listening, remember that knowledge is only valuable when applied. This toolkit is designed specifically to shortcut the path to a well-informed, intentional life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we spend so much time obsessed with accumulation. We constantly look for the next hack, the next app, the next piece of information to add to our daily routines to make us better.
We do.
But when you look at this entire toolkit, from the Stoic boundary of control to the Socratic destruction of weak ideas, it points to a very different conclusion.
Yeah.
Maybe the ultimate sign of a successful, deeply productive life isn't about what we constantly add to our routines. Maybe true mastery is having the courage to decide what we are finally willing to completely let go of.